Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special edition of the Astrology Hub podcast. I have to just begin by saying this is one of those dream come true moments for me. This is the fruition of about almost 6 years of desire coming to life. I'm speaking today with Adrian Duncan, and we have partnered with Adrian and AstroWow to bring forth Astrological Reports. So the printouts of your chart and or your year ahead that you can get electronic, that is a summary of all the important aspects and transits that you have. And I'm so excited about this because we've been trying to do this for a very long time. I saw the need for it. It's like there's people that might not yet be ready for a reading, but this is a great way to get a taste of astrology and the amazingness of astrology when you actually see that, whoa, I could put my birth information in and oh my gosh, they're describing me so accurately. So that's what we're talking about here today. This is basically one of our kickoff moments for the Astrological Reports. If you're here watching us live, you are the first people in our audience to even hear about this. We will be talking about it more as we progress, but I wanted to bring Adrian on today because he is the writer of the reports. And I would love for you all to get a feel for the energy behind the reports, to understand the inspiration behind them, and to just get to know Adrian. He's another one of our incredible 49er crew, which I just seem to attract into this field. You all are amazing. Something happened in 1949 that is extraordinary. So Adrian's there with Rick Bean and David Cochran and Georgia Stathis and some of our very favorite people here at Astrology Hub. So Adrian, welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. We are so happy to have you here.
Well, thanks very much. A very nice introduction.
Yes, well, it's true. And a couple of things just to give you a little bit of a background, but I'm going to have Adrian share his story, which is going to be a lot more fun. But just to give you a little bit of orientation of Adrian, he's an author, consultant, and international speaker with over 30 years of experience as an astrologer, as a speaker, who speaks regularly at congresses all over the world. Countries where he has spoken are France, Holland, Britain, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Ireland, Canada, the US, Australia, and New Zealand. And so, Adrian, let's just dive in because I'm really curious. I haven't actually heard this story, but I know there's a story. Tell us how you came to practice astrology. He's giggling.
Well, it's a bit of... It was a mad period, actually. You know, I hitchhiked to India. I was 20 years old. I arrived in Delhi and I found this book by Alan Leo, Astrology for All, you know, and I kind of wanted to learn astrology. So I bought the book and I was completely gripped by it. In fact, I had sort of a visionary experience connected with this, you know, and in India. And then I went up to Kashmir, and it was my 21st birthday, and I had a telegram from my girlfriend, and she turned out she was pregnant. She said, and that was my 21st birthday present, and I was kind of ready, and I said she should. It seemed natural to me come out to India, which she did, and my first kid Tommy was born in India. On the beach in Goa, or on a house in Goa, you know, and he was an Aquarius, and it was like the whole thing about Aquarius kind of blossomed inside of me. Really, it did, you know, and I kind of got this kind of understanding of how the outer planets were affecting society. It was like a stunning experience, and it took me months to recover from it, and you know, and it slowly, that kind of was the seed which brought me into astrology.
Wow. And so, okay, I know this isn't the focus of our talk today, but what you just said about the outer planets and how they influence society is fascinating. I mean, what was that experience? What were the downloads that you had? What were you able to see?
Yeah. Well, it's a long story, but I did a talk, I think, in Seattle about it. It was not a bad talk. You know, the thing is, I actually felt the influence of the planets. I could almost see the auras of them in the sky. And I could see that, you know, that the suffering in humanity and on the world was basically connected with this transition process, which was like the outer planets were like machines of change, and because humans were kind of in this process of transition, it was like a lot of pain and suffering in the world in a way. And it was like the dawning of the Aquarian age, that I actually had a kind of very strong vision of. And so it's difficult to explain in detail, but I've got about that, which, and maybe an article on my website about it too, which would explain some of the thinking behind it.
I think a lot of people in our audience will be resonating and able to relate. There's often times where for me, it feels like I can vaguely tune into exactly what you're talking about. Like there's this almost like a machine that's like churning these wheels, and we are experiencing that movement, and it can be very uncomfortable at times.
Yeah, but because we're caught up in it, you see, we don't see it. But if you just go back 100 years, people were like singing songs around the piano. They weren't like looking at Netflix, nobody could communicate beyond their village, everyone went to church. It's like the changes are so vast, and yet because we're in the middle of them, we don't see what's going on. But if you have this kind of overview in a sense of what's going on, personally, I'm really confident about the future. Global warming and stuff like that. The whole kind of what's happening with pollution and how it's all going to change. And I'm pretty confident. So.
Good. That's great. I love hearing optimistic viewpoints on what is possible and where we're going. So that's great.
Yeah.
Adrian, tell us about Astrological Reports. Like, for those that are like, what is that? I don't even know what that is. Tell us what they are, and then I'll ask you a follow-up question to that.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, first of all, I developed the first reports in the 90s, and that was when, there was no internet really, and so it's all done on the computer, and that's how the reports started. But what happens now is that it's all in real time. It's all programmed in the server. So you put your data in, and it takes like 5 seconds for the horoscope to be generated. And because, I think maybe I should describe how the reports are helpful, because when I sat down to write the interpretation, the first report, which is this character and destiny report about your own birth horoscope and the trends that are happening now. When I sat down to write about that, I had a lot of clients, and I could think of it for every astrological influence. I could think of somebody I talked to, what they said, and what needed to happen. For me, writing it was like having this connection with the clients, and so what you can use that report for is like getting a pretty detailed overview of the major influences in your horoscope. What's difficult, though, and virtually impossible, is to integrate it in a way that an astrologer does, where he kind of or she kind of prioritizes what they need to talk about. You can't really do that so easily in a report. Now, with my second report, though, the Essential Year Report, that's really something else and much more advanced in that way.
Yes. So we are partnered with Adrian to offer both. So we'll be offering that basically like your natal report, which is your character and destiny report, but then also the year ahead. And we've been testing it with our team to see, does it resonate? Is this helpful? And resounding yes. They love these reports. So what inspired you to take on this project? Because I'm reading these and going, oh my God, how much information you must have to write in order for it to address every possible combination.
And with the character and destiny report, there's quite a lot of text. But with the essential year report, the birthday year report, there is just so much in that. It's like every progression you can imagine, like even Mars progress going from one sign to another, or retrograding from one sign to another, or Mercury, all progressions and all transits, and all the solar return, they're all integrated in the year report. So there's like thousands of texts. It took me 3 years to write the essential year report. And then, well, I could go on. So I stopped.
Well, what inspired you to do it? Because again, this is a huge undertaking.
Yeah, what inspired me? Yeah, a friend of mine came and said, "Look, why don't you make an astrology program?" And I said, "No, thanks." And but I hated the astrology programs that existed in the early 90s. If you've ever seen them in the late 80s, they were DOS programs. They weren't Windows, and they were really, really irritating. So I made one of the first Windows programs, and it sold fantastic. And we this interpretation, it was translated into 12 different languages, and it's Japanese and everything. But what inspired me was this guy who said, "Do you want to make the program?" And he was a programmer. So I said, "Okay, you program it, I'll write." And I designed the kind of program, and he programmed it. He was a bit difficult though, and there were a lot of problems. And that's software. When you're dealing with software, it's just don't do it.
Don't do it. Well, we're happy that you did it. So for people that are considering, like, I know in my own astrological journey, pretty early on, I started buying reports. Like I went to Astrocom and just different places, and I bought reports, and I found them really helpful. I think
Astro.com, which was reports written by Liz Green, they were brilliantly done, brilliantly designed, and brilliantly programmed.
Yes.
But there's a lot of others at the same time that weren't good at all. So Astro.com is great for that.
Yeah, exactly. So that was my first experience. And so when we started Astrology Hub, I was like, we should be offering these. Like, these are really, it's a helpful tool. Even I think, for someone like me, I was new to astrology. It was a very helpful to get this printout, and be like, whoa.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, but it was.
And did you find that it really reflected your nature?
I did. But here's where I had the sticking point, and it's something that you already brought up. It was so much information, and I didn't know how to resolve conflicting information. So I didn't have an astrologer right there with me, giving me a reading going, well, here's how these two things could work together. So that was the one point where I was like, gosh, it says I'm this over here, but then it says I'm this here. And these two things don't seem to really go together.
Yeah, I try to get around that with both these reports by dividing them into sections, so that you've got your kind of life path, your career, your love life, your sexuality, and so that there may be contradictions, because people are full of contradictions,
Right, of course.
But if you can put them in the right boxes, it might be a bit easier to integrate.
It definitely is. It definitely is. So what would you say about where in the astrological journey it makes sense to use these? Because for me, I was new, but I also see a lot of our students buy them when we do offer them with different partnerships. So what would you say?
Well, that's quite a complicated question, because I think, in the astrological journey, I don't know where people start, but often it could be just with sun signs, and suddenly a sun sign just hits the mark, and you think, oh, how did they do that? And you sort of think, there's some kind of connection, right? And you could get a report straight away, I guess, So I think as soon as you're learning astrology, especially with my character and destiny report, as soon as you start learning astrology, it's quite a good idea to get that, because it would, it describes each of the influences in your life, which you need to know, and would correspond with your teaching or whatever you're learning. With the essential year report, though, I would think anybody, even an astrologer, could use that, because it actually does things that you'd never as an astrologer, it would really be a lot of work to actually get all that information, all the transits, all the progressions, the solar return, and integrate that. Whoa. So I actually think that, anywhere in your astrological journey is good for that report.
Can you describe the year ahead report a little bit more? So just for those of you listening, that's a report that you could technically get once a year on your birthday or any other time, and have to explain it a little bit for them.
Yeah, I will. So it's designed for people from 13 years old to
wait, you cut out for a sec. So 13 to 90?
Yeah. Okay. So if you're 91 or 12, it would actually be a problem. And that's because I've actually written text for every year or so, So if you're 35, what's going on when you're 35? These are like to do with planetary cycles, just like when you're 29, there's going to be a Saturn return, or 29, 30, and when you're 59, there's going to be a second Saturn return. And this all gets into the intro part of the report. And then, but, it's complicated because if you have Saturn, let's say you have a Saturn return, and you've got Saturn in Gemini in the 9th house or something like that, it'll actually go into the database, get and merge text from that Gemini in the 9th house into this phase, So if you're 29 and there's a Saturn return, the text is going to be different for everybody who's 29. It's not going to be the same text. It's going to be a unique text. So not a single of these year reports is the same as the next, as another one, basically, unless you're born at the same time, same place, same date.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. And I am curious, what kind of astrology do you practice? Like, how would you characterize the astrology that you do?
Yeah. I'm really kind of normal.
I'm a normal. Is that a thing? Normal.
Well, that's it. It's the thing. I believe in a kind of sort of orthodoxy. Like I don't want to go. I mean, I love all kinds of little things, like midpoints and harmonics. I kind of like them, but basically, I just want to talk about the astrology that everybody's going to agree upon. I don't use any fancy calculations for progressions. I use the day for a year system, which was traditionally used, and I don't kind of introduce a sort of esoteric or high spiritual kind of concepts. I just want address people in a kind of how it's going to affect their normal life, and so it's like a wide tent, a big tent astrology.
A big tent astrology. And where did you learn? I mean, you had a book that was your first inspiration, which I just want to go back to for a sec, because that happens a lot. Like I've talked to a lot of astrologers where it's like, I was in the library and a book like fell off a shelf and landed on my head, or like I just happened to find this book laying around. I mean, that happens a lot. It's like astrology finds you when you're ready for it.
I got another story. You've got to hear it.
Okay.
I was living in Wales with my wife and 2 kids, and she's Danish, so she got homesick. And one day, spontaneously, we decided to move to Denmark. From one moment to the next, we packed the car and drove to Denmark. And when I arrived in Denmark, I couldn't speak Danish, and I said, just get the newspaper and see if there's a house to rent. And there was a lot of houses to rent. And I said, well, take that one. And the guy said, oh, no, there's lots of people looking at the house. And I said, okay, just tell him we'll take it. We don't need to see it. We'll pay the rent. So we got the house, and we moved in, and there came a letter into the house with a horoscope logo on it. I said, what's that? It was all in Danish. And it turned out that the chairman of the Copenhagen Astrology Society had just moved out of the house. And I became the chairman of the Astrology Society 7 years later. So, that was like,
Another sign, another really
You
obvious.
could say that was a kind of coincidence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's amazing to me when I hear all of your stories because it was inevitable. There was no escaping.
Yeah,
And
there's a
so
lot
many,
to it.
yeah, so many astrologers who come in as skeptics, it's like, oh, I'm going to disprove this thing that's obviously not real. And then, 30 years later, that this has been their life. They're studying astrology because they couldn't disprove it.
Yeah, it's a good attitude to be a bit skeptical and then
I agree.
go that way. I like that.
Yeah. So how would you recommend people use the reports? Like, is it if you have a specific question about your life at a certain time, is it like, how can people use it and how is it helpful?
Yeah, I think, with a specific question, it's better to see an astrologer because it's really difficult to get an answer to a specific question from a report.
Right.
I think that's where it's going to fail you in a sense. Because you might get lucky, and a description of a transit might just explain what's going on and give you the right advice. But I think it's more like self-knowledge. The report is great for self-knowledge, the character and destiny report. So you want to learn about yourself, and you're going to, with a bit of luck, you'll resonate with that, and you'll think, oh God, the universe is magic, and get a sense of connection with the cosmos, and it's a feeling of meaningfulness you kind of get out of this, that maybe that life is more meaningful than you expected. And then I think with the essential year report, the prediction report, that's a pretty good report for finding out what's going on in the year. It's quite specific, I think, reasonably specific, without being, good enough to make this. It might be a little difficult to make decisions based on that, but you might get some pretty good hints about, what's going on and why, and how long it's going on for, and when. So you've got these timing issues which can be resolved from the report. So yeah, I think it's especially both reports, because both reports tell you about trends that's happening now. I think that a lot of people they get confused about. They can either be confused about their life, or can be going through a crisis, or they can be desperate to make some changes. And these reports can really pinpoint these life crises and generally give helpful advice about what to do in the circumstances. For example, if Uranus transit is on your MC, which is the career area of your horoscope, and you're tired of your job, you've just got to change jobs, and that's going to be in the report. And so even if you think, oh, what about money and stuff, you're going to be much happier making that change. So they can be really helpful, I think, in that respect. But if you want to ask, I've just met someone and I'm not sure if they're the right one for me, that's a little bit more difficult. I would recommend you talk to an astrologer.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing is that it can be great confirmation for, things that are coming up in your life. And you're like, is what I'm tuning into something that is part of my path or not? And, right. So, and so much of it is just, it's almost like permission to follow that intuitive guidance that you have. And when
I agree.
Right?
I think also with prediction, when you make predictions, really you're suggesting to people what they already feel they want to do, and when I do consultations, I basically, I just resonate with the person's, I propose a future scenario, and if it resonates, that's the prediction. I just encourage them to do what they need to do, I feel they want to do. But you can kind of see that, of course, you can see in the horoscope. So you proactively encourage them to visualize the future they want.
That's such a powerful thing to do. And I think of astrology almost as like an intuition training tool, because we do know, but we don't trust ourselves. So the more that you get the feedback from the report or from the astrologer, it's like, oh, okay, maybe I can just trust that. eventually it's like, maybe I can just trust that the answers are really within me, and I just need to follow that.
I mean, the astrologer doesn't have the answers. You have the answers.
Yes.
The astrologer is going to help you find them.
Help you find them. Exactly. Okay, a couple more questions for you. What kind of feedback have you received on these reports over the years? Like what kind of things do people say?
Well, obviously I pick out the nice, it's pretty good feedback, but some people it's changed their lives, really. Some people it's transformed their relationships. So obviously the people who give me positive feedback, they've had some great experience, but I think some people are just amazed, amazed that it was so accurate. And I'm amazed too.
Oh shoot! Oh shoot! You just cut out and you were saying something so great. You said, "I'm amazed too." Can you just re-say that?
Yeah, I'm amazed too, because astrology is just so magic. It amazes me every day.
Same. And that actually brings me to my next question, which I don't know if you have an answer for this, but I love to ask, especially you seasoned astrologers, because I'm sure you've contemplated this quite a bit. But why do you think astrology actually works? Like, what is the mechanism? Why does it work?
The explanation is going to kill you, I think. This is how I think it works, okay? All suffering in the world, in individuals, is based on identification with an illusory sense of self. And in actual fact, the self, and neuroscience actually proves this, the self is a construction based on perceptions that you make, and it dissolves. So it's not even your own experience of reality is not a true representation of reality. So nothing's going to really work or help you very much. But the horoscope, because it's based on the movement of the planets and the kind of synchronicity with the universe, it's the closest you're going to get to mapping out your character, which is what you imprint on the outer world and get feedback from. So people's behavior, you could say, any kind of behavior like Venus Saturn, for example, would be connected with sort of a fear of rejection. So there'd be sort of behavior which you're actually projecting out into experience and then into the world and affecting your relationships proactively with it, because that's the energy within you. So astrology is just a great map of that dynamic, and that's a short explanation.
That's fascinating. So basically it's a map of the concept or construct of self that isn't necessarily reality, but it is whatever reality we came here to experience for whatever reason, maybe to know ourselves even beyond that construct. And I'm kind of extrapolating.
I think that's exactly right, as you put it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Do you think it's benevolent, neutral, or neither?
No, it's benevolent, and the reason it's benevolent is because it's ecological. So what you're talking about is humans being in harmony with nature, and in harmony with planets, and in harmony with the cosmos. So it's a harmonious thing. You could believe something completely different, like, for example, well, I don't want to mention something controversial, but people are very dominated by their belief systems, and if your belief system is astrology, it's beneficial, and it's beneficial for you. It's beneficial for other people. It gives a sense of connection with the cosmos. Of course, you could use it badly, or you could misunderstand what it's about. Then it wouldn't be beneficial. Wow.
Okay, I would love to dive into more of this with you at some point, because it's fascinating, and it's just interesting with everything happening in the world, and especially 2020, where it was like you all were talking about 2020 for years and years and years before it happened. And then when it happened, it was as described energetically. I mean, it was, of course, I don't know if there was anybody who said specifically exactly what was going to happen, but the energy of what 2020 was going to bring certainly happened. I mean, without a question.
Actually, I did make some predictions about that. And I wrote a book in the late 80s where I mentioned December 2020 as the key moment of transition, and stuff like that. But I also write articles, and I actually wrote an article in 2018 about the mother of all crises hitting in 2020.
Wow.
Because that's related to the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, which last time in Aquarius, which happened 800 years last time. So it's a huge transition for the world, and that's why, or that's a kind of explanation for the pandemic, which basically stopped the world in its tracks, and things have changed.
But to go back to what you said earlier, if astrology, if that map is a benevolent map, and these changes are basically written in the stars. I mean, you were able to see them. We're literally living through them. Do you think that eventually the changes we're going through are benevolent? They're going to bring about more positivity? Maybe.
I do. But if you look at history, it's all a bit relative, because there have been good times and there have been terrible times, and so I don't know. I don't think that human conduct is, I think there's bad conduct and good conduct, really. But what I do think is that there are intelligent people. I mean, really, much more than me, much more than us. Who are much more in control of things than we are. I think there's, you could say that I'm a Buddhist, so I have teachers, and they're far superior than I am, and it's quite comforting to know that we're not going to mess up that much.
We're not going to mess up that much. That's great. That's really reassuring. I mean,
I'm absolutely sure.
Yeah. Well, Adrian, this has been so delightful. Thank you, everybody who's been here and been commenting. I don't know how many of you have known of Adrian's work before today, or not, if this is your first introduction, but we're so grateful to be partnered with Adrian and AstroWow to be bringing these astrological reports to you. If you're interested in checking them out, go to astrologyhub.com. On our homepage, you will see a big graphic for reports. And you can just click on that and check it out and see if you want to try either the character and destiny report, which is going to give you the printout of your birth chart, essentially, your horoscope, your birth chart. And then if you're interested in looking at the year ahead and all the transits that you have coming up in a very personalized way, you can do that with the year ahead report. And I also think these make great gifts, especially for people in your life who are interested in astrology, but not quite, as indoctrinated in it as so many of us are. You may want to just gift it to somebody and see, say, hey, check this out, see what you think. So we're very excited to be here with you, Adrian, and thank you so much for all the work that's gone into making the reports in the first place, which again, I look at and I'm like astounded, just trying to compute how many different calculations you would have to do, and then how many explanations you would have to make in order to fulfill all the possible combinations of things that could possibly happen. It's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, I spent a year in Ahmedabad in India with a team of programmers. 3 years. Well, it took 1 year to program that essentially the report.
Wow.
So it's pretty complicated.
And it's been an equally, not equally, but it has also been somewhat of a long and arduous journey for us to get to the point where we can go for these. Yeah. I mean, it's the weirdest thing. I mean, it seems like it would be very simple, but every single time we'd go down the path, there would be technology like hiccups, making it too hard, or just timing, like it was just off, So this is the perfect, meeting you, and you're over
I can sympathize.
Yeah. You're over in Denmark, and it was like, here we go. This is perfect. So thank you.
Okay, well, it's been a real pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure. And so for those of you, again, if you want to check it out, go to astrologyhub.com. On the homepage, just scroll down a little bit and you'll see the reports graphic. Click on that and check out these reports. And those of you that are here live, you're the first ones hearing about this. So we would love, 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 love to hear your feedback. Check out the report. Let us know how it resonates with you or not. We're open to all of the feedback, and hopefully it will be something that becomes another tool in your tool belt, another data point that confirms your intuition and confirms what you already know, but just gives you that confidence to follow the path that you came here to lead. So very excited for all of it. Thank you again, everybody. Thanks for being a part of our community. Thank you for tuning into this episode. And thank you as always for making astrology a part of your life. We'll catch you on the next episode. Adrian, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.